Greetings from Wyoming. OSY Guy here, and this is my review of Ubuntu 17.10. There has been a change. I have been a long-time user of Ubuntu Gnome, and I have posted 3 reviews of previous versions of Ubuntu Gnome, 16.04, 16.10, and 17.04. So I was intending to do a review of Ubuntu Gnome again, but there has been a change. The Ubuntu team has decided to change their default interface. That interface is referred to as a desktop environment. If you're not, if that phrase doesn't quite make sense to you, and maybe you're not in the Linux world, maybe I could step outside the world of Linux for a moment and just say, if I sat you down in front of a Windows 10 computer and then also sat you down in front of a Mac OS 10 computer, you would certainly notice that there is a strong difference and that you would have to do things differently between the two computers to get the same work done. That in Linux is referred to as a change in desktop environments. And so back over in Ubuntu 17.04 and previous, the desktop environment was Unity. And if you wanted to download that Unity version of Ubuntu, you would just go straight to the Ubuntu website, ubuntu.com. If you wanted to have an alternate desktop environment, then you would go to various different websites besides just ubuntu.com. And as an example, since I was always using Ubuntu Gnome, I would go to ubuntugnome.org, and then I would download the version of Ubuntu from that website, and that would give me the GNOME desktop environment that I wanted to use. As of Ubuntu 17.10, the Ubuntu team decided to switch from the Unity desktop to the GNOME desktop. In this case, it's actually 3.26 is the latest version of Ubuntu Gnome, or of GNOME, I should say. And so you don't have to go to Ubuntu Gnome to go get that version of Ubuntu. You just go straight back over to the typical location, ubuntu.com. Now, if you were really paying attention there, you started to notice that I kept saying GNOME, and that requires a little bit of explanation. The GNOME Foundation insists that you say the G. And so now I find myself every now and then dropping that G when I'm talking about the GNOME interface. And so I invite you to come back and revisit this slide and just borrow a G from all these spare G's that I put here for you. I do want to also say that gnome.org has their starting page is welcoming Ubuntu 17.10 users, and so it's pretty cool that that switchover at least matches what my preferred desktop environment was. As soon as they switched over to GNOME, I was a happy camper. Now, when you install Ubuntu 17.10, it is an incredibly efficient, fast, and predictable installation. It's just incredibly good. I have used other distributions, Manjaro and Antergos both come to mind, where I've had a failed installation. I've had to reboot and go back into that installation flash drive and try it again, and that has just not been the case, at least for myself. Installing Ubuntu, I've got 4 different machines. They all installed without a blink of an eye. It was terrific, and they all have SSD drives, so solid-state drives. That gives them very fast performance anyway. But when I would install 17.10, it would take 10 minutes. No kidding. So after the installation, the startup login screen would ask for your password, and you go from there. But if you stopped and clicked on the cog here, you would find that there are 2 different sessions that you can choose from. These are 2 different display servers, as they call them. Ubuntu, without anything showing up after it, is actually Ubuntu on Wayland, which is the newer technology to draw your screen. And the Xorg version is the older technology, quite old. I think it's, if I remember right, it's like over 20 years old or something like that. Been around for a long time, and it will probably be around quite a bit longer as well. But you have this choice. If you just go in with your password and you don't even open up the cog, you're going into the Wayland version of Ubuntu. If you come to this screen at some point and you change and select Ubuntu on Xorg and then log in, then the next time that you turn your computer on, the default will be Xorg instead. This is the way that the screen looks as you step into Ubuntu 17.10. Gnome describes this as a slightly modified Gnome experience. Basically, I guess you'd say that it's slightly modified in that you have a dock on the left-hand side that is not normally there in just a plain old installation of the Gnome interface. So this does show up. I really like the theming, and they've done a very nice job with this. They have a translucent panel across the top, and the Ubuntu dock is a translucent panel as well, and it's just a very pleasant appearance. Now, when you're in a session of Ubuntu 17.10, you can press Control-Alt-T, which would open up a terminal prompt, and that would give you a spot where you could type in this command. So if you typed in sudo apt install gnome-session and let that package install and then reboot the computer, if you go back over and click on the cog again as you start to sign in, you find out that you have 2 new sessions that are possible. Gnome, which is Gnome on Wayland, and then Gnome on Xorg, in addition to Ubuntu and Ubuntu on Xorg. Now, this will bring you, if you leave it set on Gnome, it will bring you into the not modified version of a GNOME desktop. Ubuntu will bring in the Ubuntu dock, and the GNOME version will come in without the dock. So it looks like this. Just a very plain, unaltered version of GNOME. And if you're a longtime GNOME user, sometimes you'll actually prefer this because you like to go in and make your own configuration changes and add new features as you so desire. And if you have experience, then that's a very easy thing to do. Like I say, the GNOME session eliminates the Ubuntu dock. Now, if you do want to make changes to your interface in the GNOME world, it's done in a very unique way. You don't have like an installer program sitting on your GNOME machine that you open up and say, I want to install some extensions. Instead, you actually go to the GNOME website and choose your extensions from that website. It's really kind of cool. Extensions.gnome.org. And so here is the extensions.gnome.org. And this is where you can choose extensions and install them. Once you have everything in order, if you just click on one of these extensions, in this case, User Themes. Now, User Themes is already installed on my computer, and so it is already showing with the on switch here. Whereas the if it hasn't been installed yet, then it'll be showing off, and then you just click on that switch, and it'll slide to on, and then it will give you a prompt to install this extension. So very easy to do, and everything is done right from that extension's website. The problem with Ubuntu 17.10 is that it's not quite ready for going to extensions.gnome.org. It's not ready out of the box. What I mean by that is that there is a module that needs to be in place that's called Chrome Gnome Shell. Now that little module is a communication module that talks to your web browser and tells your browser what version of GNOME you're running. In this case, 3.26. But if you open up Firefox, or you open up Chromium, or you open up Google Chrome, and you haven't run this yet, then you will get a dialog at the top of your screen on the extensions website that'll indicate that things aren't quite right yet, and even when you install the GNOME extension, that doesn't necessarily make it right yet. It'll come back, and if you click through the screens up here, you find out that you need to install this extension, or this module, I guess is what I'm calling it. If you quit out of your web browser and you just open up a terminal and type in sudo apt install chrome-gnome-shell, then that will add the communication piece that will allow any one of those three browsers, Firefox, Chromium, or Google Chrome, to talk successfully to the extensions website, so that when you show up here, if you go to where it says all versions and you switch this to current version, you'll actually get a response here. It originally was showing a total of 87 pages worth of extensions. Each page has 10 extensions on it, so approximately 870 possible extensions from all versions of GNOME. But when we selected the current version, it goes down to 12 pages, or approximately 120 possible extensions that you could put in place to make changes to your to the appearance of your operating system. Oh, also one more thing. Once you have that GNOME Chrome extension in place, and you start installing extensions, you can actually go to this tab right up here that says Installed Extensions, and this is where you can choose to turn on and turn off your installed extensions, and you can also uninstall them, and you can also configure the various extensions by clicking on the configure icon right from the website. So it's kind of nice to be able to do that as well. It's a unique approach. Now, I was mentioning that if you're in the Ubuntu session, that would mean that you're running Ubuntu dock. Now, there is a favorite extension called dash to dock. That's what I'm running over here on the right side of my screen. Dash to dock is basically, I guess you'd say, maybe an upgraded version of Ubuntu dock. Ubuntu dock is a subset of the dash to dock that has more features. Now, I do like dash to dock. I have configured my dash to dock so that this session of Chromium that's running over here, I can minimize that just by clicking on the Chromium icon on my dash to dock over here, and then if I click it again, then it opens back up. So the dash to dock is my preferred favorite, and just as an extra thing to know about, first of all, there's an extra utility that you can install. You probably will want to at some point or another. If you're a longtime GNOME user, you'll put it in almost immediately. But if you open up your software center and look for GNOME tweaks, that allows you to make all kinds of extra adjustments to the configurations on your GNOME computer. So if you open up GNOME Tweaks while you are in a GNOME session, you can actually find Ubuntu dock and turn it on and turn it off if you're in the GNOME session. If you are in the Ubuntu session and you open up GNOME Tweaks, it's just not available for you to turn off the Ubuntu dock. It's not available, but in the GNOME session, it is. So, and you see a listing of some of my favorite extensions that I use. Now, I do have a frustration with the out-of-the-box experience with Ubuntu 17.10 in that I like to look for files when I'm in the activities overview. Let me just clean up my screen here. I'll move to a new blank workspace just so that you don't see all kinds of extra stuff going on there. But if I press the logo key on my keyboard, or alternately if I just click on the word activities in the top left hand corner, I go to an alternate view that's called the activities overview. In this section you can search for programs, you can search for modules within programs, and you can also search for files. So now if I type in Firefox, you see that I bring up Firefox that easily. I can just press the enter key and I go into it. If I go back into Activities Overview and I type in printers, then I'm actually going to the section in Settings that is the printers section. So I could have just typed in Settings instead, and then I would get the more generic spot. But I instead went straight into the printers section because I typed that in just from the search window. Now, I also go and grab documents. I have a document on my computer that's called Ubuntu Notes. And there it is showing up right there. If I click it, I go into that text file. Now, here's the problem. In stock Ubuntu 17.10, that doesn't work. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It sounded like they were concerned that the indexing that happens because of the activities overview to get files to show up, they thought it was kind of a performance hit, or that there was a degradation in performance or something like that, I guess. But if you opened up the settings panel inside of Ubuntu 17.10, and I'll just bring that back up again, there is this module here that says search, and this screenshot over here was from the same search module on an unaltered version of 17.10 Ubuntu, and the search section is showing on and the files section is showing on, but it's not working. And so, if I tried to type in Ubuntu Notes in that session before I made any changes, it simply would not work. And so, what I'm really suggesting that you do is let's see if I get this over here. You just type in sudo apt install tracker, type in your password. And now I've already installed the tracker, so it's not showing that anything was changed. But it's nice to just pop in and install this, and then this opens up the capability for you to look for files from inside your activities overview. Now, if you would like to add all the features that I just got through talking about in one shot, there is a terrific way to do that, and that is to do the sudo apt install vanilla-gnome-desktop. I told you that it takes 10 minutes to install Ubuntu. If after you step into your Ubuntu session, and you install vanilla GNOME Desktop, that'll take another 5 minutes. When you do, you have a complete full version of GNOME. Very nice. So that includes the GNOME session that I mentioned. It includes the Chrome GNOME shell. It includes GNOME tweaks. Also includes dconf, which is the desktop configuration editor, and it actually brings in some keyboard shortcuts as well. Let me just show you a quick view of that. Let me just open up a text editor called Gedit. Now, of course, you can always just move this around manually, but you have the capability to have a keyboard shortcut where you hold down Control and Alt, and then you press a number on the number pad, and then that will go visually into the same place as the number pad. In other words, what I'm saying is the number 7 is the top left-hand corner of your number pad, so Control-Alt-7 will push this to the top left corner, and here's Control-Alt-9 to go to the right corner, 3 to go to the bottom right, and 1 to go to the bottom left, and so on. So those all happen as soon as dconf is installed. All those shortcuts that are in dconf also activate, and so you get some extra features because of that. And also the traditional themes that you've always had in the GNOME world is Adwaita and Adwaita Dark. Just as a side note, I follow very avidly the Ubuntu podcasts, or not the Linux podcasts that come from Jupiter Broadcasting, and love those guys. They do a great job. I'm just hoping that they will learn how to say Adwaita. It's not Adwatia. I have no idea why they keep doing that. So hopefully that they will eventually make that change. Okay, now some display server comments. You have two different technologies. The newer one is Wayland, and Xorg is the older one. Ubuntu decided to make Wayland the default. It is the cutting edge and sometimes the bleeding edge display server. So I've taken a quote from the Ubuntu 17.10 release notes, where they warn you that some screencast and remote desktop server apps don't work under Wayland, and so the workaround is to switch over to the Xorg session. Now, when you install Ubuntu, you automatically get a program already in place called Ramina, which is a remote desktop application. I did not test it in Wayland. I didn't test it actually at all. But I imagine that this, if it does work in Wayland, it's probably spotty. And so if you do use Ramina, you may need to be switching over to the Xorg option instead. I do use TeamViewer. I did accidentally use TeamViewer while I was running a Wayland session. It worked okay, but it was pretty spotty, and I decided that it was spotty enough that I didn't want to experiment further. If I'm connecting up to a client who's running Windows 10, the last thing I want to do is to be struggling with my own computer. And so I've chosen to leave my computer on Xorg. I also did experiment with Chrome Remote Desktop between this computer and another Ubuntu 17.10 computer. Could not get Chrome Remote Desktop to work unless both of the computers were in Xorg. My screen recorder is Simple Screen Recorder. It's a favorite app, and it just does not function under Wayland either. It has to be in Xorg. I also did have a freeze in Nautilus. I was just trying to save a file, type in the title for the document, and choose the save command, and I had the whole screen freeze up on me, and I could do nothing for about 30 seconds, and then finally the screen came back and behaved as if everything was normal, and I had that happen a couple more times, and started to realize that Perhaps I was seeing another flaw in the Wayland arena. I have never had that problem. Every time I've gone into Xorg, Nautilus has been very reliable. So I have chosen to stick with Xorg for a lot of what I do. Now, there are some window handling things that I'd just like to point out. There is an edge snap, screen edge snap that I want to talk about, and a window edge snap. And this has changed a little bit, but I have a get it document, a blank document ready here. If I, as I'm clicking and dragging the title bar, if I suddenly push the shift key and leave it down, I can pop into the left corner, bottom left, bottom right, top right, all with minimal movements of the mouse. The shift key just allows me to move that around quickly. Now, let me just do this much. I'll open up a new get it, and this document has kind of informally tiled right next to the previous window, so that's cool. I like that. And of course, if I want to again hold down the shift key and move around like this, I can certainly do that. Now those are edge snapping, or screen edge snapping, but Windows edge snapping is also, it also works, but it's kind of a little bit weird. So let me show you. Here's a screen edge snap like that, and here's a window edge snap like that. So this just matches up to the left edge of a pre-existing window up. So that's nice. So I get these options like this, and that's all good and well. But now if I do the same thing over here, and I try to snap to this right edge right here, it actually doesn't work. I actually snap to the other left edge like this. So that's I want it to snap and go right to there, and it's just kind of a little bit bizarre. It's almost like it seems as if the development team just kind of missed a detail there. I'm not sure exactly what happened and why that window edge snap doesn't work the way it used to, but it's not a deal breaker, but I found it a little bit odd. Now, there is a feature that continues where you can tile a window so that it is occupying exactly one half of the screen. So either on the left side or on the right side. And so now the way that you do that manually is to click and drag the title bar until you're nudging the left side, and then it redraws and occupies exactly one half of the screen. And if you do it the same way over here, you get the same tiling option manually. But I like to just do that with the logo key and the left arrow. That also moves that into the appropriate corner, or logo right will push it into the right corner. Now, here's my complaint about previous versions of GNOME. When you would tile your window into a left-hand side, you could not adjust its border. So this right-hand border would not move. It locked into place. But in GNOME 3.26, this is now a movable window. So I do really like that. Now, I am using that technology on this screen. And so I got to explain that. You got to see this. This part I just didn't realize this is how it works, but I did tile my Chromium session over here on the left. So I selected the Chromium window and pressed the logo and the left arrow, and then my screen, my web cam is on the right side. I tiled that to the right with the logo right arrow key, and so I ended up with two side-by-side tiled windows. What I found out is that the center border is now synchronized. Okay, so when it first showed up, it was like something about like this, and so I had I had a black band above my slide and a black band below the slide, and I wanted to change that. So I started to drag my Chromium window until I could get it resized correctly, and I found out that I was actually changing both windows. They're now synchronized so that you're changing both borders at the same time. How cool is that? That's something that's new in the Gnome 3.26. My hat's off to them on that one. I really like that. My conclusions on Ubuntu 17.10. The Gnome version is terrific. I like the pre-configured version, especially for, I think it's a good choice for inexperienced Gnome users because they really don't have any problem with, they don't have to do any configuration. The Ubuntu dock is in place, very functional, very nice. Everything is nicely themed and polished. If this basic interface becomes something that you want to change, then you will have to add some of those apps that I've talked about to allow you to make configuration changes, and you'll certainly want to run that tracker command if you want to activate your file search from Activities Overview. And I still like the Xorg is the best one for compatibility and so on. So now for myself as an experienced GNOME user, the absolute best thing you can do is to install vanilla GNOME desktop. As soon as you do, you have a very satisfactory, very complete GNOME experience. It's very stable, especially using Xorg. Now, Wayland in many cases is quite good, but it just kind of depends on what you use on a daily basis. That might change, but if you like to be on the cutting edge, Wayland is a great way to go. But if you want stability and complete reliability, it seems like Xorg is still a really good choice. And I must say again that the errors have been greatly reduced from the errors that used to show up in 17.04, and so the experience is so enjoyable that I can't recommend it highly enough. This is really the terrific way to go. You can't go wrong. I believe you will have a terrific experience if you decide to install Ubuntu 17.10 yourself. Thanks for watching. Look for future videos from OSY Guy.